Hello gamers and welcome to another exciting edition of Game Warp. I'm your host Elwood, and joining me of course is my co-host Miss Kimla.
Hello.
Tonight we're going to be talking about Sea of Solitude, another indie gem. This game be coming through EA as part of their indie wing. The game itself being designed by Cornelia Geppert, a German comic book artist turned video game designer who runs the German studio Jome Games. And this is a game which is rather unique, as it's about analysing someone's mental condition, should we say? I'm not sure how to best describe what this game is about, but basically you play a young girl named Kay who wakes up in a flooded city in a rowboat where she's surrounded by stormy conditions and a monster that's lurking under the water that's determined to eat her. And by working her way through this world, she realizes it's a world of her own creation, a world flooded by her tears and haunted by events in her life as she attempts to deal with these events as she makes her journey through this world. A very unique game, and one that we've seen a few of these games in recent years. There was that what was that bloody game with the chick with the blue face paint called?
Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Yeah, and it's a game, like we've seen a few games about the mental health and conditioning and things that we saw. It said like Hellblade, which had the focus on mental health, and certainly when it comes to independent games, they've never really been afraid to shy away from sort of deeper and more personal topics, and certainly this is what we get with Sea of Solitude, a game developed very much out of its creator's own personal journey and dealing with issues of confidence and self-loathing and self-destruction, all which play into the game as we journey through this world, and the problems within Kay's life metamorph themselves as these monsters which inhabit this world. But Kim, what did you think of Sea of Solitude?
I mean, Sea of Solitude is a really well-designed game, I think. I mean, overall, everything really works. There are a few little things, maybe very trivial things that I have an issue with if we're being nitpicky. But overall, I think it really is a unique way to talk about, I guess, depression and loneliness and some of the harder topics and it also talks about, a lot more about the different things in her life, such as, whether it's her parents' issues or her kind of like a relationship with her younger brother that she dives into, and a lot of things that seems to weigh on her mind as she goes through this game.
Yeah, definitely so, and as we mentioned already, these personal issues are represented by different monsters. I mean, we have an oversized raven, which represents a young brother. We've got her father represented by a chameleon, while her mother is represented by an octopus-like creature. And by traveling through this world, she slowly starts to unroot the source of the issues of within her life, and where she's made mistakes, where she's perhaps not acknowledged these issues before and sort of bottled them up, and this world really sort of becoming a creation of that sort of pent-up guilt and frustration that she's feeling in her life. But the game itself, it sees you travelling often by boat and foot, and occasionally doing a little bit of swimming as you travel through this flooded world, and you slowly uncover the secrets and the causes of its creation, and all the while you're being stalked by this sea monster which represents self-destruction that's constantly determined to eat you, and you spend a great portion of the game trying to avoid being eaten by said monster. Although at the same time, this is a game where you don't have energy bars or lives. It's just a case of if you die, you just start back a little bit further back, and you start again. And the whole while we're being sort of narrated by Kay, who's slowly sort of uncovering the puzzle itself. But in terms of the actual game itself, it's not like there's any big battles to fight or any sort of great quests that we've seen in similar sort of titles. This is very much, it's almost like a visual novel in a way. It reminds me very much of the walking simulators we've seen, such as Everybody's Gone to the Rapture or What Remains of Edith Finch. Just these games which just involve you travelling through a world and having very little in terms of sort of traditional gameplay, even though the main sort of elements of gameplay we get here are a lot of platform mechanics, which are still fun to play through.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, the gameplay itself is rather simple, but obviously you have to go through, as you said, you have to kind of evade the monster in the water, and there are little mechanics, a lot of platforming, and there are some little parts where when you're trying to defeat those bullies and stuff that they're chasing after you need to maneuver around them, and that sort of thing. But it's nothing super deep. But at the same time, I mean, you spend a lot of time in your boat kind of maneuvering around and figuring out where you need to go next and looking for, I guess, collectibles if you want. But overall, I think, but for a game with this sort of, I guess, this type of story and all that it's trying to say, I think it's sufficient for what it wants to do. Because if you think about it, a lot of stories are like that. I think the one that we played, which is closest to this, would probably be Concrete Genie.
Yes.
Where it also talks about kind of a more, the issue, a deeper issue in the game. But obviously Concrete Genie has a different mechanic where you do have something to do where you're painting on the walls and you could get really creative in that sense. Where this one is less that, but there are certain little things that you can do, which, like, I had a lot of fun when I realized there were collectibles, because I missed a bunch in the beginning. But you have these message in the bottle where I have a feeling it's kind of messages that she wrote on the way, because it sounds really, like, relevant to her situation, a lot of them. I mean, I think I was missing, like, 5 at the end, so it wasn't really missing a ton. And then you have these seagulls, which you can shoo away, and then they have this really beautiful cutscene of them flying up into the air, and then you get to see the entire area that is below, type of thing. But I mean, the main thing with this game is, I think that the best part of it is really not only the creativity of how the game, the story is set, but also, like, the cutscenes are done really well. But when you're playing the game, what really helps is their sound design, I think, is sound design, and the soundtrack itself is just really, really well done. I remember there was one section, especially when you're talking about, I mean, for the bullying part, I think it was really, really dark. And it was one of the first encounters, I guess, when you go through the bullies. And I remember thinking, when I first heard it, how scary it was, that there was, like, this mocking voice about, like, oh, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna kill you, or whatever. And yeah. I thought that was just so dark. And as this starts, like, chanting in the background over and over again, once you're running through them, it feels really, it does feel really a lot of pressure on you. And I think that's only one of the examples of the things you have to go through. But the way that they create the sound design and pair it with what you're doing, the constant pounding of a certain sound or a certain effect, really all together creates this kind of feeling of agony and irritation, I think, once you're playing it. And in many ways, I think it's to represent the feeling that you would, kind of like this suffocating feeling you would get if you were, when you encounter situations like that, like bullies or unhappiness about certain things or feeling trapped in whatever. So I don't know. I think in that sense, the game really lands really well on kind of creating that type of feeling for the players as they're going through it.
Yeah, I think this is a game which certainly hangs on its story more than its actual gameplay. The gameplay, while on the surface, is very sort of simplistic. It's not the most taxing of platforming or, getting from one location to the other, even though there is a skyscraper sequence where you're working your way up the levels, which I have to say was a little frustrating, especially because you get to the upper levels and you've got to sort of time these jets that constantly try and push you out of the building. But the deeper you get into each of these levels, when you encounter these monsters, and the deeper you get into the worlds, and the darker it gets, as you said already, when we dealing with the trauma of the younger brother, and we're dealing with the bullies, and you have in the background it's sort of this light taunting. It's like, I'm going to get you, I'm going to kill you. And then we get deeper in, we hone in on like what the actual memory was, and we see how like Kay was like completely distracted with her boyfriend to really care about what was happening with her brother. And we ultimately end up in this scene where her brother being like bullied by these kids, and it just gets incredibly dark. And again, we see this with the breakdown of her parents' marriage, and you're following a whole relationship just through that's playing out as you're going through the different parts of this level, as you meet these two people who meet and they fall in love, and they find out that she's pregnant, and you have this initial excitement of the fact that they're having this baby, and you see how the relationship sort of slowly became more toxic and fell apart under the pressures of parenthood. And it's so well represented by these fantastical elements, and the fact that it's still telling this very sort of grounded story at the same time, and you really do get a real sort of emotional response to the stories that are being told. I mean, certainly hearing the deterioration of the marriage playing out, and as you're going through, is just really just absolutely heartbreaking. And
I mean, especially with like the skyscraper scene where you have that pounding sound of those vents and that sort of stuff, and then at the same time, I don't know if you turn it off or not. I know I think you can, but my controller was like it was just like shaking the entire time with every single time. And it was just eventually, you never realize when you're playing other games how stressful that is. But in this game, paired up with that loud, like repetitive sound, it was getting like really getting to me, this agony, this really like feeling that, oh my god, I'm so stressed, I'm so tense, oh my god, what is going on? It's like you really feel that pressure and that feeling of, I guess, suffocation that you kind of feel that character is going through when they're talking about like the marriage breaking apart or whatever. But I think what really is even more of a focus is when you think about the creature, not only the creature in the water, but that shelled creature that there is also. I feel like both of those are kind of like the inner person inside of the main character. Both of them having their own kind of point. Like you said, I mean, the one in the water is definitely something like self-destruction, whereas the other one is more of a protective type of element. She is kind of, it is kind of more like she kind of gives you these degrading comments, but in the end, when it loses its shell, you can see the vulnerability of it, and it kind of, I feel, represents the main character a lot. And these parallels, I think, is what really is really interesting when you're cutting through the different stories, the different parts of her life, and these things that are weighing down on her, and probably the inner dialogue as they're going through about maybe like blaming herself, about like having self-blame and that sort of thing that's going on inside of her, probably due to some kind of depression or the loneliness she feels as her life literally kind of falls apart one by one, and she's trying to piece them all together.
Well, this is one of the main mysteries of the game. I mean, Kay, in this world, she's portrayed as a monster, and she's trying to find out why she has become a monster, essentially. And a lot of this, as I said, is based on the game designer Cornelia Gepert's own personal experiences of being in toxic relationships and isolating herself and dealing with these sorts of emotions. And you mentioned obviously about the shell creature, about how which she interprets as being self-doubt, and the idea that as you go through the game, you're sort of shrinking it down into this sort of healthy version of self-doubt. And I think she did a TED talk where she was talking about the game, and she explains all the themes and ideas of the game, which is really interesting to see. And how she's actually approached it, and this world which is very sort of abstract, which I think is just perfect really for when you're dealing with a game where it's like, you know, these fragments of emotions that someone has been sort of suppressing for like so long, and now it's sort of like it's mutated inside her, so it's created this world of this sort of real sort of twisted, flooded world that she's now having to battle through to sort of deal with these demons, to try and find a way back into a sense of reality in a way, which is ultimately what your end goal is. But it's such a fun world to navigate. It's a simple world at times, but it is really fun. Like when you get to travel around in the boat, that's really fun. And or even if you're just jumping around from platforms, and even with the collectibles, they're pretty fun to find because they're not like hidden in like the most stupid of places. They are pretty obvious. You just got to keep your eye out for them, and there is some light mental agility to try and figure out where some of them are. But overall, it knows where the focus of the game is, which is obviously on solving these personal traumas, and less on the collectibles. Just there as sort of like a nice little bonus.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, the world is great. I mean, especially because every single time we go through a different character, not only does it fluctuate between light and dark, and it having its own different type of dangers, but it also changes between each one how the world is laid out, how much it's flooded, or the water level will keep changing as she goes through each of this, and you know, I guess a flooded city is really interesting because you do see these different signs and the broken areas and stuff, and then at the same time when the game is, I think, really fun when right after when you realize that as she goes through the stories, the water parts, and then you get this achievement called Moses. thought that was hilarious. And then for all the chapters, it pretty much continues like that, where you go through these different areas, which opens up, and that's when you discover the bulk of the story of her family member, whether it's her brother or her parents or whatnot. And they always add different elements, like little shadow kids or something. And then there's like a lot of different little parts that changes in every single one. And it's simple, but still, I think it adds to kind of really having that progression from light to dark in the story.
Yeah, something I did actually find a little nagging with the game is that just the actual gameplay elements did become a little repetitive in places, especially when we get into sort of like the final sort of sections, and basically go around collecting the light orbs. And it's it's fun the first time you do it, but by the second and third time, it's all like maybe we could have come up with something a little different. Much like the objectives, everything's kind of vague. You can launch flares, which, as long as there's not a building or something in the way, will guide you where to go, which is a really nice use of light effects, it has to be said. But at times it sort of like felt like you were just sort of wandering around aimlessly.
But I think that's the point, is at the beginning they right away tell you that whenever like your flare is used so that you know where you're going or have an idea of where you're going. And for me, I mean, I used it pretty much every time at the end of a chapter when I'm sitting in the middle of water. I was like, okay, well, let's do this, figure out the direction I need to go, and then I'll be like, oh wait, I should go look around, see if I spot some collectibles, and then I'll drive around, get lost, and then shoot my flare again, figure out where I need to go. But I think that, the key is how much you enjoy. I think with any games that are similar to this, where it's not really focused on gameplay and it's really simplistic, much like, walking simulators or stuff. I wouldn't call this a walking simulator. No. There are a lot of cutscenes. There is a lot of platforming, so it's not really a pure type of walking simulator.
It's sort of a hybrid, really, between a platformer and a walking sim, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly. Because there is a lot of cutscenes. There is a lot of and the cutscenes are pretty lengthy. On top of that, they're like a few minutes long, but they're really well done. But I think that the main thing is when you play a game like this is that these simplistic controls are there so that it's not like you have a lot to remember to use. But at the same time, I don't really mind games like that because I'm a real garbage gamer when it's really complex games. So games like this is kind of like my cup of tea. Because I don't game to be like really try hard like Souls game style. I enjoy watching them, but I don't enjoy playing them.
Like something a little more laid back.
Yeah, exactly. And this game, you can't really call it laid back because of the topic that you're talking about. But at the same time, it is I think that when you're going through it, there is a lot of repetition, but what it changes is like the little things. I mean, like right when at the end, I thought it was really annoying. We had to get that like faceplate, the wolf's faceplate.
Okay, yeah.
From like the grinny characters, like the evil light. I don't know what you call it. The floating girl there.
Lighty.
Yeah, Lighty. Yeah, and then it was just like you would have this, and it was like she turns into the really really scary version of her, the evil version, and it's man, that is evil stuff, and you just as you're doing that part, I found that part kind of annoying because I have like zero sense of direction, and then by the third time where you need to navigate this super long path, I had to like run the path once. And then go back and get it, and then run the path, because I couldn't react fast enough. But that's just me, like my challenge was the open world where I just got lost, and I would like have to remember landmarks of where I was so that I wouldn't go back to the same building. And I was like, I'd get off the boat and I'd be like, wait, I've been here before. I've seen this sign before. Get back on the boat, go to the next spot. So yeah, I mean there are little things, right? But it all depends on the type of gamer you are and what you like. But I think that this one is really heavy on the narration and the topics that they're trying to tell in, I would say, in a different way. For me, I think the best monsters were her own, whether it was self-doubt or self-destruction, I thought that the whole idea of, at the end, I guess spoiler alert here, at the end when you have to bait the creature to eat the other one, and then you go to the end and then you find them in little baby forms, and I thought that was such a really great ending, because it shows that whether you're talking about, I didn't listen to TED Talk, so I'll take your word for it, that there's self-doubt and self-destruction, that these things, when you're faced with, I don't know, some kind of depression or some type of loneliness, that these negative feelings are always inside of you. But when they're healthy, when you're like in a healthy mindset, they're in like little baby forms, and then they will always have that space to grow into the monsters that they become.
Yeah, and it brings me on to the next sort of point, really. I mean, what did you make of the voice cast of this? Because obviously it's, I believe it's a largely German cast speaking in English, which means it's very accented, which I personally liked. I thought it was a nice change, but I know there's been some criticism of it sounding a little stilted.
Yeah, I mean, some characters for sure, it has that feeling, but I think that the material is strong enough, and like the story itself that is trying to tell, and it's understandable. Like, you understand everything that's going on, and I think as you get used to it after the beginning, it doesn't really it didn't bother me that much.
Yeah, if you get the director's cut, it's got a rewritten script and a new cast of voice actors, as well as.
But that's only on. Yeah, but the director's cut is only on Nintendo Switch, I think.
Yeah, so. No, I'm just saying that if you want a different voice cast, you can always buy it on Switch. Unless you don't own a Switch, then I don't know. Find some actor friends and have them read the script out for you. it's not like they got a play or anything to put on at the minute, is it? So, but yeah, I like it. I liked it a lot, and especially with the characters of Kay and the father in particular. I thought they were the way they were presented was really sort of engaging. Really, it worked for me anyway. So.
Absolutely.
But I have seen a few people in the comments like saying, "Oh, it's all like I really want to play this game, but the voice acting really put me off." And it's how do you answer that? Put it on mute. Something. It may grade you, it may not. It depends. I think it's a real sort of personal tick on that one, but it's gameplay wise. I thought it sort of was really immersive in the world, and certainly when you needed those emotional bursts, I think it really sort of delivered. I don't think I've had such a big emotional kick since we played Everybody Goes to Rapture. When that got into its end game, I think that one really sort of hit home as well. So it was kind of nice in that respect. I think everything else that I think of that we've had like the big emotional sort of hits, like Little Nightmares and stuff, it's all been making our own story up and providing our own narration. So to have a game like this, with actual narration and ideas that it's trying to put across, I think this was certainly really stood out there. So,
I mean, if we're talking about little issues, I think one of the issues I had with this one was more on like really nitpicky in the sense that I really hated like some of the achievements made sense.
Okay.
But then you had some really dumb ones, which if you look at some of the things that you had to do, it was really rewarding you for dying or something, Like, it was like, oh, jump into the hands in the water 10 times and then you'll get that thing, or that sort of thing. And I just thought it was so ridiculous at points that it was just like, some of these things was just there for the purpose of it, and I thought it was kind of a stretch on what was necessary, I get, traveling a certain spot or firing your flares, like things that were naturally that you do, but I mean, some of these things were just so far-fetched, and I think I know talking about achievements is kind of really a nitpicky type of thing, but I think that for some people who say like, I'm not a person that likes 100% games, but I did think about it when I really like a game, and I thought about it for Sea of Solitude, but to go back into the game and then die 20 times to get 2 achievements didn't seem like a fun time.
No, waiting for the sea monster self-destruction to move her ass out of the way was also not the most fun time either. It's all like, go to this platform. No, wait 2 minutes for it to disappear around the corner. Now you can swim across the gap, and then you wait again because she's just swimming past. And it's like, yes, I like the idea that when you have those near misses and she butts against a platform, and that's really fun, and it goes really dark if she's like hones in on you. But there's times where it's like, just get a move on already.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's too bad on my side. I thought it was really like one of the things that was really great about that segment is that Kay has the ability to kind of like monitor the monster, which I thought at the beginning was such a cool type of mechanic to have, where she can actually monitor the trajectory of the monster and stuff like that. And as you get further in the game, it gets a little bit more, it feels more tense because you're now in deeper water, and then the monster can actually like butt by you and splash up water, and it'll create this kind of like tense type of feeling for you. But I think but it is, once it's kind of like you dodged it once, you dodged it second time. It's not really you're not too worried. As long as you get the timing right, then it's not too bad. I think the only time I got eaten was because I couldn't figure out whether I could climb on the tentacle or not. So it was the only time that I was like, what am I supposed to do? And then I, like an idiot, I jumped into the water, and then all the stuff on the screen started blocking me. No matter where I turned the camera, something was obstructing my view, and then I got eaten. And then I got the eaten animation, which was a little bit shocking, and then that was it.
Yeah, I just got eaten a lot. So it did it kind of sucked, so.
But I mean the Eaton thing, Eaton cutscene, when you have that, I think that cutscene when you watch it the first time, it is pretty startling because it It's this whole, like, tossing you in the air. It's like a shark eating you,
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, the thing is that when you sort of look at the creature more, and it's basically just this giant head on a weird body. It's not quite the thing you think it is, and when you really start looking at it. But I think as this ever stalking presence. Yes. I think as a representative of self-destruction, I think it really sort of did its job well. But at times you think, maybe we could have found someone else to be a threat. Mix it up a bit, but never mind. So yeah, Kim, would you recommend this or not?
Definitely. I definitely recommend it. I think it's a really unique type of gaming experience. I think everything is done really well for what it is. But obviously, if you're for like super hardcore gamers who aren't into like narration focused or walking sims, like that sort of thing. Not feelings or anything, but I'm just saying like really into this type of like story heavy and not as heavy on gameplay sort of style. Then this game might be not too immersive or not too engaging for some people. But, if you're into this sort of thing, and I think it's something to definitely discover. And for me, I think, honestly, it's a hidden gem. But, it is an EA original, so maybe there's a decent amount of people who have discovered it, or else they wouldn't have come up with the director's cut for the Nintendo Switch.
It's true. Put out by Quantic Dream, who, let's not forget, gave us such classics as Nomad Soul, Fahrenheit, and Detroit. But yeah, I don't know if your idea of fun gaming time is you broing out with your mates and punching things and stuff. Maybe this isn't for you, but it is on Game Pass, so you can take the gamble on it and not have to worry about spending money on something you're never going to play again. Which when I was playing this, I was really frustrated with the fact that they don't have this available on the cloud, so you can't play it on your mobile, because it's such a great mobile game, which would push me, swing me towards getting it on the Switch, because it's another of those titles that I could see myself really enjoying on the handheld, even though you wouldn't obviously have the achievements, which is always a downside of the Switch. I think that's one of the most frustrating things. So there's so many games I like playing on the Switch, like Little Nightmares and all these sort of like classic arcade games and stuff, like all the Neo Geo and SNK games, and it's sort of like you just feel like, it would be really great if we got achievements on this. It just always feels like something missing. But no, Nintendo don't do achievements or trophies or participation medals or anything, which just really sucks. Even Steam does achievement points now that you can trade for money, I think, so. But yeah, it's the fact it's on Game Pass is really great, and it's also great to see another company like EA doing a focus on independent games like we've seen with Microsoft Studios. So it's always nice to see these smaller games being pushers. Where's the AAA titles? And I think it's a game that's worth checking out. I think you may only play it once. Once you beat it, I don't think there's anything to really make you want to return to it again.
Unless you want to catch all the seagulls, shoo all the seagulls,
it depends,
and then find all the bottles,
I suppose there is that to it.
Yeah.
As an experience, I enjoyed it while it lasted. Well, that brings us to the end of tonight's review. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do follow to hit the like and subscribe button where you happen to be listening to us. You can follow us on Facebook, and we're on Instagram as well. And you can check out our archive, which is gamewarppodcast.wordpress.com.
gamewarpblog.wordpress.com.
Okay, well, I'm just going to give up and do this anymore now. Just use Google. Just hammer away at the keys and two things appear. So if you want to check out our blog, you can do, which is gamewarpblog.wordpress.com. Come and say hi to us. Let us know what you think we'll be playing, and let us know what you think of the games as well. We always love to hear back from you folks. That's obviously the end of tonight's review. Thank you all for listening. Thanks to my co-host Kim, and we will be back soon with another game. But until then, keep gaming and look after yourselves. Good night.